Two women in Lexington, Kentucky decided one day, you know what? Let's just kill a bunch of people. And that is exactly what they did. Hello, true crimerers. This is the case of Lafonda and Tina. Viewer discretion is advised. Real quick before we get started, hello, if you're new to the channel, my name is Mike. I tell thrice true crime stories a week with fancy language just like that. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I post a new video. I also post daily videos over on my TikTok where I'm more well known over there. I have about 3 million followers or so feel free to follow me there as well. The link will pop up here at some point in the beginning and at the end of this video. And then it also will be in the link tree that's in the description of this video below. In that link tree, you're also going to find my merch store, and we ship all over the entire world. You'll also see my email address listed below. If you want to recommend a case to me, you can do so. Just email me the name of the person or the name of the incident, where it happened, when it happened, and I will add it to the list. There is over 5,500 names on there, so it may be a while before I get to yours. I literally close my eyes and I scroll the list and I pick one out at random, to be fair. So it'll happen eventually, I promise. But let's get into today's case. This case happened in Lexington, Kentucky on April 23rd, 1986. Unfortunately, I don't have any photos of the victims or the crime scenes or anything like that. There is very limited information, it seems, about this case. I have images of the killers, but that's about it. I looked for hours last night and I could not find a single confirmed photo of the victims. So at the time of this case, Lafonda Faye Foster is a sex worker and a habitual illegal substance user. I don't know if YouTube likes the D word that much. And she was also basically an alcoholic. And she had an on-again, off-again relationship with a woman named Tina Powell. And their relationship was primarily sexual in nature. But Lafonda was, I guess you can say, more of the dominant one. Very bossy, very demanding, and aggressive. This could come from the fact that for a lot of Lafonda's life, especially her teenage years, she had been assaulted by a lot of men. And this created a very obviously, deteriorated mental state, if you will. And that's kind of why she eventually turned to illegal substances and alcohol. And then it just kind of became her life. So on April 23rd, 1986, Lexington, Kentucky police get a phone call from a woman named Virginia Kearns. Virginia tells police that there are currently two women at her apartment, Lafonda and Tina, who are extremely intoxicated. They're being very belligerent, they're being loud, and they're being disruptive. So when police arrive, they, see everyone there, and according to the police, Lafonda and Tina didn't really seem to be that intoxicated. Virginia, in their eyes, seemed to be highly intoxicated. That being said, the two women, Lafonda and Tina, left the apartment. So apparently across the street a little ways, there was another apartment building, and in the parking lot of that apartment building, there was a little shindig, a party going on. And so Lafonda and Tina walked over there. At one point, Tina pulled out a knife and she was trying to sell it to people because her and Lafonda were trying to make whatever money they can because they had a goal of purchasing a gram of coke. And yeah, so they were just trying to get money out of anyone at that little shindig. They see Virginia Kearns walking out of her apartment and they kind of yell at her and sort of scream obscenities towards her. But then they end up following Virginia because Virginia was going to a drugstore down the street. So they follow her. At the drugstore, there are numerous witnesses who state that they see Lafonda and Tina basically holding Virginia and kind of shaking her almost violently. And so what was going on there was Lafonda and Tina were asking Virginia, give us money. We need money. Give us money now. And she's like, I don't have any to give you. No. And then essentially Virginia says, well, maybe my husband will give you guys some money. So let's go back to my apartment. At her apartment lived her husband as well, Carlos. And they also had a live-in, housekeeper named Trudy Harrell. So when they get there, they ask Carlos, hey, give us some money, kind of demanding money. Carlos at first says, no, I'm not giving you anything. You're just going to use it on you know what. Then they start yelling at Carlos. A big argument breaks out, and Carlos finally caves and says, all right, I can give you $25. It's going to have to be by check, and we're going to have to go cash it at the bait store, I guess, down the road. So Lafonda, Tina, Virginia, Carlos, and Trudy, they all get into, I guess, Lafonda's car or Tina's vehicle. But as they're doing that, two more people walk up to Virginia and Carlos's apartment. Good friends of theirs, Roger Keene and Theodore Sweet. And so they kind of cross paths because they were going to hang out at, their apartment. And so they said, come in the car with us. And so they get into the car as well. So now there are 7 people in this car. Lafonda and Tina are up front. At some point between 6 p.m. and 7 p.m., this group of people arrive at this bait shop where Lafonda presents this $25 check with Carlos, and the guy cashes it. And so Lafonda gets her money, and she again states, yeah, this is just for some coke. Okay, thanks for sharing. Then Lafonda drives the car to an acquaintance of hers named Lester Luttrell, and she asks and demands Lester for money. Lester says, no, not doing it. And so Lafonda takes out a .22 caliber gun. She fires it through a window in Lester's house, and then they leave. And then sometime after 8 p.m., the group of 7, they end up driving to this big kind of open, desolate field on Mount Tabor Road, or Tabor Road, Tabor. Lafonda and Tina force the 5 people out of the car, and they demand that all 5 of them lay down face down on the grass. And they're like, what the hell is going on? And all of a sudden, Lafonda takes out a gun and she shoots each one of them. And then her and Tina stab each one of them. Trudy from this first attack, Trudy is the only one to die. Her throat had been cut. She had been stabbed numerous times and shot in the back of the head. And then, because the other 4 aren't dead yet, Lafonda and Tina force all of them back in the car. And as they're driving away from the field, and these 4 people are bloodied, and they've been stabbed, they've been shot, they're slowly dying, right? And then Lafonda just drives over Trudy's body, and then drags her body like 300 feet across dirt and gravel, because next to this field, before the body finally just sort of, lets go. Lafonda then drives to a local tavern where she gets out of the car, but she makes essentially Tina stay in the car to hold the other 4 people. Lafonda goes in and she's asking the bartender, hey, do you have any 22s or 38s in terms of bullets? At first, the bartender's like, no, I'm not giving you any of that. She goes, please, I have to kill rats. And he's like, okay. So he gives her the ammunition. He also notices from the window, he can see the car door that she's in covered in blood. And he's like, you might want to clean that up from, your rats. And she's like, oh, okay. So she gets a couple of bullets, and then she gets back in the car. So next they drive behind, I guess, a paint store, and they park the car in this like alley. They force Virginia Kearns out of the car, where they just shoot her in the back of the head. And then she collapses, and that is where she dies. Multiple stab wounds. Her throat had also been cut, and obviously multiple gunshots. Then they ran over her body as well and dragged her for like 30 or 40 feet down pavement before they finally, the body was left behind. Then Lafonda drives back to the tavern where she got those bullets, and she asks him for more. And he says, no, just go away. He also notices the blood on the car is now gone. At some point, the gun that she was using, Lafonda, it broke. Something broke inside of it, a mechanism. And so after they killed Virginia, they drive to Lafonda's stepfather's house, where I guess he assists them with like a nail and like jimmy rigging the gun. It won't fire perfectly, but it will still fire. While she's in the house, Tina is in the car with the remaining 3 people, and they are like begging Tina, like, please do something about this. You got to stop her. Let us go. Take us somewhere. You're in the car. But she says, well, first of all, Lafonda has the keys. Second of all, no. And at that point, Tina starts honking on the horn like, wah, wah, wah. You got to get outside. We got to go. And so that's what Lafonda does. At some point, they drive to another bar where Lafonda begs a couple more people for money so she can get money for coke. And these people are like, no, sorry. And Lafonda seemed very fidgety, and she seemed kind of off. And so this person she was asking for money said, well, what's wrong with you? And she goes, oh, I just shot a couple people. And then the person sees a couple more people in the back of the car, and she goes, well, what the hell are you going to do with them? She goes, I'm going to shoot them too. She definitely seemed intoxicated to this witness. But Lafonda gets back in the car after Tina says, hey, we got to go again. And then they drive off. The remaining victims in the back who are still alive, they state to them, hey, can we please get some food? We're hungry. We're dying here. We need something. And Lafonda's like, okay, we'll go through a fast food place. And that's what she does. She drives them through a fast food restaurant. She orders food. When she gets up to the counter to get the food and pay and all that, she just basically goes, she drives away. Doesn't get the food for him. She was just messing with him. Then they drive to another desolate field off of Richmond and Squires Road. They force the three men out of the car at gunpoint. They have them lay on face down in the grass, and then they fire gunshots into the backs of each of their heads. And now all three of them are deceased. That was Theodore, Richard, and Carlos. Theodore was shot actually near the car. It sounded like he maybe tried to get away, and he was shot again near the car. And so Lafonda and Tina, they had a can of gasoline in the car. They took it, dumped it all over the car, and then they just set the whole thing on fire. And so Theodore's body was also burned. As all of this is going on throughout the evening, these bodies are being found, and you're getting witness statements about these two women who are acting really strange and asking for bullets and all of this. And police get to the crime scene where the burning car is. They find the gun. They threw the gun next to the car. It had kind of had some fire damage to it, but they recovered it. And then Lafonda and Tina just kind of casually walked down to Humana Hospital, and that was on Richmond Road, because I don't know why they did that. It was very strange because they didn't really have any injuries to themselves, but they walked in covered in blood. So the nurse is like, well, you don't have any injuries, at least that would have caused all of this. And so you've got a lot of blood on you. What the hell? And so the nurse calls the police. And the police get there and they notice this, and they now have heard about these bodies being found, and they're getting all these statements about these two women. And so they're arrested that night and they're brought into the station. Lafonda is she's in a holding cell covered in blood. And as she's in there, she's taking like water from the toilet or the sink or something, and she's trying to wipe the blood off of her shoes. And then she takes her socks off. She tries to flush her bloody socks down the toilet. Doesn't work. She then takes her bloody sweatpants off and gives them and switches them with the inmate in there with her. But the inmate ends up giving those pants to police. The blood, eventually they would have blood typing done, because this was before DNA was a big thing. But the blood type on her clothing matched the blood type found from the victims. They also found a couple of unfired .22 caliber rounds, which they would later confirm were the same exact bullets that were used to kill the 5 people. And the gun they found, they could prove was the gun. Tina Powell, she had a bloody knife on her. Again, blood typing would match some of the victims. And I think she too also had .22 caliber bullets on her. Again, the same ammunition. So both women are now charged with 5 murders. As Lafonda is in a cell awaiting her destiny, she confesses to another inmate. And she tells this other inmate, I killed the 2 women and I made the men watch it. I wanted them to see what it looked like to kill those 2 women. And then she said, and then I had to kill the men because they saw what happened. And the person says, well, why did you do it? And she goes, because those women were bitches. She even commented how one of the men just wouldn't die. He kept trying to get up and leave. Just wouldn't go down. And so I finally killed him. She goes, it was the hardest man I ever killed. In February of 1997, both women would go on trial. Lafonda is convicted and she is sentenced to death. Tina, basically, it seemed like Lafonda was the brains of the operation. She made this all happen, and she was dictating to Tina what she needed to do. Tina followed suit. I mean, she went with it, and she stabbed these people and shot people, but they felt like that Lafonda was the big brain here, and Tina was kind of the side up, the goon, if you will. So Tina was also convicted of all 5 murders, but she was not sentenced to death. She was sentenced to 5 life sentences without the possibility of parole. Then in 1991, because I guess of an error at the sentencing hearing for Lafonda originally, that error would lead to a new sentencing trial. She was still convicted of the murders. That wasn't going away. But the sentencing would end up changing. She would no longer get death. Now she was sentenced to multiple life sentences without the possibility of parole. And all for what? For what? The blood alcohol level on Lafonda and Tina were through the roof. They were like double or triple the legal limits. They were super intoxicated that day. And actually the victims were super intoxicated too. And so they ultimately came up with this motive that stemmed from severe intoxication and also being severely, on illegal substances. So they kind of took that with Lafonda's history of being battered, and she kind of, just became this mentally unwell person. And that's essentially the motive, is that she just flipped. And she also wanted money for more illegal stuff. And that there was a financial motive there, but she didn't really get much out of them. And that was kind of the confusing part. There was like nothing on them that they could sell for a lot of money. So the motive is sort of like, but it seems to be fueled by alcohol and drugs and that kind of thing. But ultimately, she made the choices, and so did Tina. So ultimately, they are at fault. And it's just a sad and tragic story, really. Lafonda and Tina were lovers, and Tina, I think, just wanted to do anything that Lafonda said, and so she kind of got roped into it. But honestly, she's equally as evil. I wish I could tell you more about the victims, but unfortunately there just is no information on them. But the 5 of them were basically tortured, if you really think about it. Especially the 4 who were still alive after that first attack. I mean, they were sitting in the back of that car with multiple stab wounds, cut throats, bullet holes. I mean, they were going through hell. And this was lasted for a couple of hours, really. At least Lafonda and Tina are where they should be. I'm not the biggest supporter of the death penalty, especially with how we do it. It's very, very flawed. Incredible, because we're executing innocent people and executing people who it's flawed. But there are cases where I'm like, if there is undeniable proof that they did these things, someone like Lafonda especially, and Tina, in this particular case, I feel like that is exactly what they deserve, the death sentence. They brutally killed and tortured these people for what? For a couple of bucks to get some coke? Are you kidding me? But then again, I shouldn't be surprised. I've covered cases where people have killed for a couple of bucks. And I guess it's just one of those things that thankfully I'll never understand the mindset, and hopefully none of you understand it either. So, there's just some people that are very broken. And I wish Lafonda had gotten some kind of help, along the way. Because then maybe this wouldn't have happened. At least the 5 victims in this case got the justice they rightfully deserved. But that is it for this case. True crime, a Rooney Dooney Dingleberry Dongs. I hope you found it interesting. As usual, please subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, follow me over on TikTok, listed below, merch below, and recommend the case to an email, and I will add it to the list. All right, what was that? I don't know. Anyway, like I always end my videos, let's do our normal Q&A. So go ahead and ask me some questions. Ask me any questions you guys want about true crime or me. So let's go. Any questions? Any questions? Ask away. Go on. Hello? I don't know if this... Are you guys hearing me? Can you hear me? Questions? Any questions for me? My favorite color? I don't see anything coming up in the chat. So... Maybe these will help. I can see better. No, I'm not seeing any words come up on the screen. Questions, guys. Questions, any of you? Anyone? Oh, I see. I get it. This isn't live. This isn't a live stream. This is me recording a video. Oh, okay. First question. Mike, why are you an idiot?